we start from the ECG, where red flags have been hoisted across ECG's operational areas in many parts of the country as tensions grow among members of the Public Utilities Workers Union or the Trade Union Congress, who say they are strongly opposed to what they describe as a hasty move to introduce private sector participation in the company. The union warns the decision could undermine an ongoing turnaround program that is already showing results. In a statement, PUWU said it was surprised by media reports that the government intends to appoint a transaction advisor to transition ECG into private sector participation before the holidays, despite an existing reform program being implemented jointly by management and workers under the supervision of the Energy Ministry. The union explained that the turnaround program followed extensive engagements with the Energy Minister and was designed to revive ECG through internal reforms rather than privatization. We'll get you the details of that statement very shortly. First, my colleague James Aveji was at the headquarters earlier and where a red armband have been hoisted in the protest. Watch this.
Utility Workers Union of TUU says protest against government move to appoint a third party or a transaction advisor for the private sector participation in the Electricity Company of Ghana has started here at the ECG headquarters in Accra. The workers have begun with hoisting red bands across the entrance of the ECG headquarters. They said they are kicking against one thing, that government must back down on this particular move. In a statement they have issued on Monday, December 29, they revealed that they have had an agreement with the Energy Ministry to boost revenue generation, because that has been at the center of the discussions. That has been the problem of government with the Electricity Company of Ghana, where their revenues have been declining. Apart from the losses in the system, the major challenge has been the inability of the Electricity Company of Ghana to collect its own revenue, leading to debts with customers. Government says they want to engage a third party to move into the revenue collection in order to boost the revenue generation of the ECG. The government, in a statement, indicated that they will be appointing a transaction advisor in order to see that materialize. They said they will be doing that by end of this Christmas into next year. PUWU said they are kicking against this, and their reasons are simple. They said they have had an arrangement with the Energy Commission, with the Energy Ministry, promising to improve their revenue collection. This, they said, they have done in the last few months, in the last 5 months, and so they do not see any reason why government should go ahead with this move. They said this is just the beginning of a long protest until government takes the decision to back down. Some workers are here, although a chunk of them have moved, are off on Christmas break. Those here will not speak to us on camera, but the indication we get from them is that their leaders have their full support, their full backing in order to carry this through. It is unclear the number of days they'll be doing this and how they would escalate it, whether we'll be seeing them hit the street in protest. That is unclear. But as far as they are concerned, they have started this with this question of red bands, and they will continue to kick against this until government backs down. From the Electoral House here in Accra, I'm James Savaji for Joy News.
Well, let me bring you excerpts of that statement and now from PUWU, who is rejecting that transaction advisor to the Electricity Company of Ghana. And according to the statement, it says the attention of PUWU of TUC Ghana has been drawn to media reports of government intention to appoint a transaction advisor for the ECG before Christmas, but we know Christmas has gone on. Now, the announcement came despite the ongoing turnaround program agreed with the Ministry of Energy and is being run jointly with management and workers of ECG, led by PUWU TUC. This program was the outcome of constructive engagements with the Ministry of Energy and aimed at reviving ECG through internal reforms rather than privatization. This came on the back of the minister's assurance of non-interference in the activities of the power distributor. Clear deliverables tabled at the meeting as a roadmap were accepted for implementation, which we are religiously following. It comes as a surprise, such an announcement of the appointment transactional advisor. We hereby wish to express our strong opposition to the move for the appointment of a transaction advisor as announced by the Ministry for Energy. Over the past 5 months, ECG workers have demonstrated an exceptional level of commitment, discipline, and dedication to this turnaround agenda. And results include revenue collection, improved system losses, have drastically reduced, power supply has been stabilized for the benefit of Ghanaians. Well, let's go on the line now and speak to Dr. Nyarko of the TUC. Well, Dr. Nyarko, you're welcome to the polls this afternoon. We've seen your statement. You're opposing a transactional advisor to the ECG. I believe government has the right intentions to introduce a transactional advisor to the company, despite internal, measures that have been put in place. Have you in any way transacted or, better still, engaged with government to even understand from their perspective?
For having me. We have engaged government, and that engagement, we understood it to mean the intended private sector participation was to enable ECG collect its revenues and to be able to pay the IPPs, to obviate the need for government of Ghana to take money from the budget to pay for IPP debts, and to get a stable light for Ghanaians. Now, after this engagement, we then agreed with government that, okay, all the things you want to do through private sector participation, we, the union and our members, will be prepared to work with government to ensure that ECG collect the revenues. So if you read the statement, we then sat down with government and agreed on a number of things government will be doing, the union and the workers will be doing, and the management of ECG will also be doing. So over the past 5 months, and I was part and parcel of those meetings. Over the past 5 months, the results have been good. The budget for 2026 captured the result that ECG revenues have increased by 90%. Power has been stable. System losses have gone down. The IPPs are getting their payment. Of course, we recognize there's still room for improvement. And the workers of PUWU, the ECG workers, are prepared to go the extra mile in working with government to do that. Now, if the early result shows such promising progress, what is there to be fixed by rushing through a privatization program? So it comes as a surprise to us.
But ECG also has issues with the debt burden, reason you've also introduced private internal, measures to ensure that some of these things are taken care of. But is that enough, or can PUWU, assure that they'll be able to scale up these internal gains without private capital?
I mean, the issue of private capital has always been an issue that has been used to justify privatization. And in this country, we have just too many examples of private foreign companies coming with a promise to invest. And then at the end of the day, they actually don't come up with anything. We were in this country when we were told that Vodafone was coming with private capital to invest in GT, coming with technology to expand and to create more jobs. But after 2007, when GT was privatized and it became Vodafone, what we have seen or what we saw was a destruction of about 4,000 jobs. And today, look at the state of Ghana Telecom, which became Vodafone and now Telecel. So this issue that foreign investors are coming with capital too often has been used as a bait to force us into a privatization, but those capital actually never materialized. Yes, PUWU workers and ECG workers are prepared to go the extra mile. This is just the beginning. If in 5 months, by working together as a team with government, would raise revenues to such a significant level, it means that we have demonstrated that we can do it, and we are willing to go the extra mile. There are other measures that both government and workers will have to take, and we can promise you will do our part to salvage ECG and to make sure that we do not need any private sector participation in this strategic national assets.
Well, Dr. Nyarko, let me get some insights from the ministry spokesperson. We're grateful for your time on the polls. Exactly what will be the role of the transactional advisor if he should come on board on ECG?
Good afternoon to you, and then good afternoon to Doc, and let me say good afternoon to your cherished viewers. Let me take the opportunity to wish everyone Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. The issue of PSP, that's private sector participation, was approved by Cabinet as far back as April 2025. Mm-hmm. Since the approval, consistently, the ministry led by the Honorable Minister, Dr. John Nyarko, has always engaged PUWU. There's not a single time they've requested for a meeting that the ministry has declined. The government served notice to them that these are structural challenges that needs to be addressed. And at the said meeting where Doc referenced, which will be around June 2025, they requested that instead of government to go ahead to implement the private sector participation, which is not a sale of ECG, but the introduction of a private sector in an aspect of ECG's business where we recognize that there are critical challenges, for example, technical and commercial losses, and largely when it comes to billing and collection. The government listened. The government gave the workers the 6 months that they requested. Over the period, we've seen improvements, which no one will run away from. Collections have improved. Revenues have improved. We are still not out of the woods yet. There's still significant deficits when it comes to service by ECG, especially the collection, and then also technical losses. Today, as we speak, if you look at technical loss, you're looking at about 9%. If you look at commercial loss, the last report we had as a ministry is around 27%. And so the government's position is that at no point did it communicate that there will not be PSP. The PSP has always been on the table. The work of a transactional advisor is to look at a myriad of issues. You're looking at the assets, you're looking at even how to go about the structure. And recently, the committee that government put together launched the framework or the guidelines which will guide the PSP. And so let me emphasize that governments will continue to engage PUWU, as has been the case over the period. It's not that the appointment of transactional advisor automatically means the sale of ECG. The sale of ECG is not on the table, is out. What the government's plan is to introduce concessionaires to help ECG when it comes to some aspects of its operations, which it has had difficulty. And so the government will continue to engage them. I am surprised that Doc and his group are in the media because at no point in time have they requested for a meeting and has been declined. And so we should still be back on the table and engage as parties, and I'm sure that there wouldn't be any need to
well, Mr. Roxon, so just to be clear, there's also an issue of a management issue, if I should put it that way. There have been an introduction of internal reforms, which is already yielding fruits. And these workers say that it has had the input of the Energy Ministry. And so the question is, if it's a matter of management to ensure that ECG cuts down on its debt or even scraps its debt and also gets or make gains, and these internal reforms are working, why do you still need a transactional advisor if really you can, revolutionize the management of ECG to get the results that you're looking for?
And that is what has been happening since January to date. Like I mentioned, we've seen improvement. It's not as if we haven't seen any improvement. It's a government that's ECG with several challenges, from procurement to costs or debts to utilities, to IPPs, collection problems, very high AT&C, what is it, aggregate technical and commercial losses. And so you've seen improvement. That's the government will not run away from. But there's still significant improvement that we have to see as a government. And that is why the PSP has never been off the table. If today, and the government has always told PUWU that if today they will be able to deal with the challenges that the government is facing when it comes to ECG, at the end of the day, why not? But they themselves will admit that we are not where we have to be. But the fact that we moved from 1 to 3 does not mean that if we're supposed to be at 7, we should not take steps when it comes to that.
So exactly.
But let's engage. Like I said, the most important thing is engagement.
The engagement, I believe, Mr. Roxon, the engagement, I believe, has been going on. We already know, right, even before the Mohammed administration took over, we knew this was on the table. But subsequently, engagement has really not yielded much on the side of the ministry or government and these workers. If you would allow me to complete my question, that would be great. So I would like to know from you, I mean, these workers insist that internal mechanisms, including proper management of this, could turn the fortunes of ECG. Why aren't you giving that a go?
I mentioned earlier that the workers made the request in June 2025. The request was not made yesterday. And so it's not as if the government has been oblivious of their request or has refused their request. That is not the case. And Doc himself admitted that over the period, there's been several engagements. And so what has been happening over the period is that the government meets with them through the Minister of Energy and Green Transition, Dr. Nyarko, and then we review the work that is ongoing, what has been achieved and what the deficit is. But the reality is that there are still challenges. And let me emphasize once again that the appointment of a transactional advisor does not automatically mean there's a sale. A transactional advisor's work is basically to structure the transaction. You're looking at the assets, you're looking at what the PSP will come to do, you're looking at, as to the government is talking about multiple concessionaires, whether or not you're going to use 2, whether you use 3, you use 5, whether or not you're going to demarcate it, you're going to do regional basis, whether you're doing zonalization, all of these will be things that the transactional advisor will look at. And so the fact that the government is going ahead with the consideration of a transactional advisor does not mean that today ECG has been sold, which is not an option. Automatically, the private sector has taken over. The government will continue to monitor their performance. The government will continue to engage them. And then at the appropriate time, I'm sure that a decision will be made. But let's come back to the table, as it has always been. Doc knows that if they call the minister even at midnight, and they themselves admit that this is a minister who has engaged them at all times, a minister that even when they call at 6 a.m., you can ask them, we made them very early, we made them very late in the evening, very late in the afternoon before. And so let's speak. There's no need to demonstrate. There's no need to go up in arms in government. What the government is looking at is a better ECG for all of us. A better ECG means that they get to keep their jobs. A better ECG means that we'll keep the lights on as a government. And that should be our primary focus. So
how soon does this transactional advisor start work?
The process is ongoing. I've seen media reports suggesting that the advisor was supposed to be appointed before Christmas, but the process is ongoing. And like I said, once the process is done, the transactional advisor will start its work. The appointment does not mean there is an automatic selection of a concessionaire. That is not the case. And so let's exercise patience, let's go through the process, let's continue to engage. And I'm sure that at the appropriate time, the workers will have a better understanding that the government does not have any ill intention when it comes to ECG.
Well, Dr. Nyarko, so you've been hearing what Mr. Roxton has been saying. This transactional advisor really is not to, privatize ECG, but restructure issues, internal problems that your company has. Do you still disagree with this position?
Completely disagree. You see, we have been in this game for a long time. And the semantics of private sector participation, privatization, they are very familiar to us. In fact, over the last couple of decades, some of the unions have done studies about how governments across the world have tended to change the name from privatization to private sector participation, or to avoid scrutiny, and to also avoid the negativity that has come to be associated with privatization. Mr. Rossi, we also want a better ECG. That is why we have been engaging with you. And as you just pointed out, if you can move from 1 to 3, and the destination is 7, it doesn't mean we have solved all the problem. We recognize that. But you should also recognize that if you have moved from 1 to 3, in 5 months, it is possible to get to 7 in the next 1 year. So we actually are prepared to engage, but it becomes a little bit more difficult when in the middle of the engagement, an external entity like the IMF comes to tell the Ghanaian public that the government has appointed a transaction advisor against something we have stood against, against something for which we are dialoguing with you. So it makes the dialogue a little bit more difficult. There seems to be bad faith somewhere along the line. When you tell us that, private sector participation is not privatization, it is not true. It is just another name, renaming of the privatization episode, which we have every evidence to suggest that it hasn't helped this country. So yes, we will engage, but we urge government to engage in good faith.
All right. Okay.
Put all the cards on the table. We can advise government on what to do with ECG than any private sector transaction advisor. The workers have worked with CGC and they know where the ECG, and they know where the bottlenecks are. They know where the challenges are.
All right.
They can come up with better solution than any transaction advisor can come.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwabena Nyarko, Deputy Secretary. Very briefly, very briefly, please.
Very briefly, yes. Doc mentioned that private sector participation is, and then he tried to distinguish between that and then privatization. I have not used privatization in this conversation. What I've said is that there's a private sector participation, and it does not have to do with ECG as an entity, where you are selling shares out of ECG or you're transferring it to another entity. No. What you are looking at is an aspect of ECG's operations, and the government has said that it is going to focus on billing and collection. So you'd come in with a concessionaire, and it will help you to recover the monies, bill and collect the monies that are due. That is what the government needs to look at, and system improvement. It has nothing to do with the ECG itself as an entity where there's going to be a seal. There's nothing like that.
All right. Thank you very much, Richmond Roxton, spokesperson for the Energy Ministry, and also Mr. Nyarko of PUWU. We're grateful for your time on the polls. Well, let's